Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Hey, what's happening? It's been a long time, but I'm back. My name's Jay, otherwise just a guy with a Bible. And I want to get back in the routine of getting some content out here that you may find beneficial and hopefully encouraging as we go along this journey of knowing God. And if you want to be notified of when new content becomes available, just search us up on YouTube for Everyday Theology. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications, and you'll be made aware of when new content becomes available for you. But otherwise, I wanted to share with you an experience. A couple weeks ago, I got the opportunity to talk to some friends about a transition that we were making from one big place that we were at going to another. Is actually at the church that we attend. Shout out to Life Point. But I got to talk to everybody about what it means to take that next step. And I used a passage of scripture from the Old Testament where the people of God were told to establish this remembrance memorial of where they had come from and to serve as a catalyst for faith for where they were going. And it's really been on my mind over the past couple of weeks to think more about that and think through that more. And as I was thinking about it, even just yet this morning, I was reminded of an old saying that I was taught whenever I was going to the seminary. And it goes something like this. It said there's really just a couple type of people. It's those who are going through a testing or troubling time, or those getting ready to go through a testing or troubling time. And when you really think about it, life is a lot like that. Every time we get on the top of the hill of the roller coaster of life and we go down and we think things are going to settle out, little we know there's a new hill right before us. And that's what God's people in the Old Testament were facing, is that they had just come across the Jordan River. God told them to establish a memorial, that they would be reminded of God's power and goodness to allow them to cross the Jordan River, because before them was a new task, a new test, if you will, and that was going to be an encounter with the city of Jericho. And if you know your Old Testament stories, then you know it's a famous experience where the walls came tumbling down after they did some marching, some shouting, some singing, some silence, all kinds of stuff going on. But I'm still stuck on this idea that God had them in the middle of the two tests. The Jordan River was behind them. The city of Jericho was before them. But in the middle of the two tests, he had them build this memorial to remind them of the faithfulness of God in their past, so that they may step forward in faith regardless of the test and that was to come in the future. Because if you didn't know, the Bible actually teaches that while God does not tempt us, he does often test us. You know, many of us have children that are getting ready to start a school year, and they are going to be going into a grade that, because they were tested the year before, the school now sees it fit that they go into a next grade. So testing in the school system serves as a foundation for promotion. Well, in the same way, a lot of times our walk with God is kind of like that. Testing times in our lives are opportunities to be promoted or advanced or to grow in our faith. And one of the most popular and famous, if you will, testing experiences recorded in the scripture is the testing of a man by the name of Abraham. A promise was made to him by God that he would have many children, and then out of nowhere there is this test that comes from God where God asked him to pretty much give his son up as a sacrifice. And that seems kind of strange, and we can't make sense of it. It doesn't make sense in our minds and the way we think about things. But in God's great wisdom and his plan and purposes for Abraham's life, it made sense in the moment for what all was going on. And so Abraham had a decision to make. He was kind of stuck in the middle. He had seen some tests in his past. Some he had successfully passed, some not so much. There are struggles just like us. But then there was another test put before him. And the Bible actually says in Hebrews chapter 11, it says that during the middle of this test, he considered that God was even able to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. And so in the context of this passage, we find that Abraham's experience is being recalled by a writer hundreds of years later, if not thousands of years later, depending on your timeline. And it says that Abraham considered that God was able. He considered that God was able. And that, my friends, I think is the hint or the tip or the learning point of life, is that whenever we have finished a test and we are going in to face another test, there's an opportunity for us to consider God. Because God's going to call us into places and positions and opportunities that are going to go beyond our own capacities and a lot of times our own faith in that current state. But he is inviting us in. He is calling us into the deeper waters. He is calling us into a promotion of faith. And in those times, whenever the test is before us, we get the opportunity to consider that God can do what he says he can do. We have the opportunity to consider that God is able whenever we know we are not. We are able to consider that God is powerful when we know our power just won't get the job done. We can consider that God is faithful and trust him with the next step he is calling us to in our journey of faith. And so that time in between the test that is over and the test that is to come is an opportunity to consider that God is able. And so for my life, for your life, for all our lives, we get the opportunity to consider God. And when we consider who he is, I believe that serves as a catalyst for our faith. To take the step we don't think we can. To have the faith we don't think we have. To experience the journey that we thought we never would. And so I hope this is encouraging to you. Maybe you've just come through a test. Now's a time to remember what God did on your behalf. Maybe you're climbing up that hill to a test. Now is the time to remember who God is and his faithfulness in your past. And as you consider the test before you, consider that God is able, because we know that he is. Well, I hope this helped. Again, if you want to get content when it becomes available, it'll become more frequent this time, I promise. I'm going to get this set up and get committed to it. But just search it up on YouTube, Everyday Theology. Hit subscribe, the like bell, and get the notifications turned on for you. And then we will see you next time.